Hello, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the program that's designed to make the world safe for ADHD. I am a clinical neuropsychologist and the parent of a child with ADHD, and I spend at least half of my clinical time treating, evaluating, assessing in general ADHD and ADHD-like situations and problems. I've been doing this for coming up on 40 years, which continually amazes me, but that's the way it goes. And I thoroughly and actually enjoy it. Now that I kind of know what I'm doing. Okay, when I first started out, and I started out basically because I had a son that nobody could tell me what was going on with. Okay, this is back in the days, almost 40 years ago, when we didn't know a whole lot about ADHD. I mean, there was some doubt that there was such a thing, and then there were people pounding on drums and claiming there absolutely was not. It was just another attempt to get your child to avoid responsibility, so you could claim that there's a problem that they were born with that wasn't your fault, and so on. But it got pretty mean sometimes. And clinically, we didn't have real great assessment tools, and also we honestly just didn't know a lot about ADHD, what it was, what caused it. And this is in spite of the fact that ADHD has been around, well, it's probably been around forever, but the first recorded medical article about it was like in 1790 something, and it was by, of course, a Scottish physician. They seem to be the ones who did all the good stuff back in those days. But there was no real solid knowledge about what ADHD was, what caused it, da. And like I say, now we know, well, it's, like I said, it's been around for at least a couple of hundred years. It's been in the research or in the literature for at least a couple of hundred years. It's not all that well researched, and to this day, there's a lot more questions than answers. But at least we have some pretty solid notions about what causes it and the best ways to treat it. I think one of the unique things about ADHD compared to other disorders is that there's a lot of resistance to the most effective treatment, which is medication. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I only see that in one other area in medical care, and that is cancer. Where people have got all these miracle cures. I started eating pomegranates and my tumors disappeared, kind of thing. And we have a lot of folks who have kids with ADHD who are claiming, "Oh, I just upped his fish oil and he miraculously dropped all his symptoms." Well, I'm going to suggest that that's highly unlikely, unless for some reason he had a vitamin D deficiency. But fire away, it's your kid. Do the things you feel like you need to do. But understand that that's probably long-term not going to be effective. And you waste time. One of the interesting new things, I just spotted an article on it this week, although it's been around for a few years, is that early treatment with stimulant medications tends to stimulate brain growth in the areas where ADHDers sometimes have slightly smaller cortical structures, which is like, oh wow. And that really makes it seem like you really should start using a medication treatment early and often. Just saying. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about today. We have the holidays upon us right now. And we've had the practice holiday, which is Thanksgiving, which is, people pop into town for a day and then they leave. Now we got Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever else you celebrate. And I'm going to try to be politically correct, but, it was Christmas when I was a kid, and that's kind of still the way I think of it. But I will try. Anyway, but usually what that means for people is that first of all, it's a more extended holiday. I mean, most of us don't get the 12 days of Christmas to celebrate, but most people get a little more time off than usual, which means that most people do things like visit relatives for longer periods of time, or have relatives come to visit them for longer periods of time. And then you have the whole ADHD thing to complicate stuff. And there are pretty much three things that you have to worry about. One, you're going to stay at home, and you got to handle that. Or two, you've got to travel to some place, and you've got to learn how to handle that. And then three, say you're going to visit, your parents or some other relative, your brother or whatever. Those three things require some of the same stuff, but slightly different approaches. So we're going to start off today just talking about if you're staying at home. Okay? Now, ideally, your child has been in school for 3 or 4 months, and you've got a routine down for getting up, going to school, coming home, getting homework done, dip-de-dip-de-dip. Now, all of a sudden, you have a week off, and that's plenty of time to lose all the progress you've made. So one of the most important things to do with ADHD kids in general, and over the holidays specifically, is try to keep your routines going roughly the same way they are. Okay, you can sleep in an hour or more in the morning or something like that, but try to keep the routines a little bit more in line with the way they are during a school day. Okay, I know some people just, it's a holiday, let them do whatever they want, and so you let your child stay up all night playing video games or whatever, and you do that for, a week, and then all of a sudden you're trying to get them back on their school schedule. Good luck. That will make your life miserable. Okay, I'll just say that. So try to stay pretty much on the routine. They go to bed at a certain time, they get up at a certain time. Try to keep it pretty much the same way. That is a huge, huge part of things. The other thing you've got to watch out for, especially over the holidays, their diet. Okay, now it's pretty well known that ADHDers are more susceptible to swings in blood sugar than neurotypical kids. Okay, and what I mean by blood sugar swings is like when you eat a lot of sweets, you eat a candy bar, your blood sugar goes from the normal range to screaming high. Okay, then what happens is your body says, "Whoa, cripe, we got too much sugar on board," and insulin secretion starts and drops your blood sugar down. Really, and this happens within a half hour or so. So you have the screaming highs, and then boom, back to a low. Neither one of those is comfortable. They're not comfortable for your child, and they're not comfortable for anybody around him or her. So you've got to watch what you let them eat. Okay? And basically you have to understand it's not just the amount of sugar, it's that amount of sugar compared to what else is in whatever they're eating. Like if they're eating straight chocolate candies, that's an incredible sugar boost. If they're eating something that's balanced with fat, then the glycemic index is down, so it doesn't jack up your blood sugar as fast as, say, something that's basically pure sugar. So you've got to watch out for that. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but one of the things there are no demon foods, but there are combinations of foods that give us really bad results. And when your ADHD child is left to his or her own devices, in a house full of candy dishes and cookie bowls and pie in the oven or fridge or wherever it is, and Bouche de Noël, if you're of that persuasion, you've got to keep an eye on them. You've got to keep an eye on the blood sugar levels. I don't mean you actually test. I mean, you just keep an eye on what they're eating and how bad it is, and try not to let it get totally out of control. And around the holidays, that's hard to do, especially if you are the one who stays at home and has people visiting all the time. Okay, you get distracted by having guests, having visitors that you try to entertain and amuse and feed and all that other stuff. But you have to remember that your priority is your ADHD child, and you have to spend a considerable amount of attention on him or her to keep things in balance. Because I guarantee you, if you don't, they will get your attention in lots of ways you really don't want to have happen, okay? So, fortunately, there is this thing called exercise. And I don't mean you have to present it like we're going to work out, although that's become quite trendy nowadays. But let them get some exercise. Let them get out and run or ride or walk or kick a ball or throw a ball or whatever. And you don't really have to be there with them, but, a little playing catch with your kids never going to be too bad a deal. I'm not so sure I recommend trying to play soccer with them, but whatever. We want them to get some exercise, because stimulating, when they exercise, they stimulate a lot of the neurotransmitters that result in calm. Plus, there are some hormones that are related to exercise, endorphins, which you've probably all heard of, which will give you, if your child exercises pretty vigorously for 45 minutes to an hour, you probably got 3 hours or so where they're going to be real calm. Blessedly so. Okay, that's gravy time. That's really a good time for you. And then the other thing you need to look at is just activities in general. If your visitors are going to be all from your parents' generation, say, your child is not going to be able to sit there, for 4 or 5 hours just talking about the good old days and remember when and all that stuff. So you need to have some activities. Some activities he or she really enjoys. And the good thing is that activity, if you'd use it properly, takes advantage of this unique thing about ADHD called hyperfocus, which is the fact that your child and most ADHDers have an area of interest, something they really get interested in. And they get started doing it and they just lose track of all time. They are so into it that they just lose track of all time. And that's gold, is what that is. Because, you need to cultivate that. You need to encourage them to make use of their hyperfocus ability. And then you need to, and we'll talk about this sometime in the future, but you will need to learn and teach them how to make use of hyperfocus in other areas than just their primary interest. Okay? Because, for some kids, hyperfocus will be video games. And, not too many years ago, we used to, oh, God, video games are so bad for your kid, dip-de-dip-de-dip. Well, now we've got this whole e-game sort of thing going, where you can get a college scholarship because you're good at video games. And it's, a really growth industry. There are professional e-gamers, folks who make their entire living, and a pretty nice one it is, just playing video games. So let's not just get into the tisk-tisk sort of mode of parenting with this stuff, because that's old school. Now ADHDers, well, anybody who's really good at video games will be rewarded in ways they were not rewarded when it was like if you could play pinochle or something. It's just, well, it's just different. It's the new age, I guess, in the new world, and all the millennials out there in the world and so on. So, the other thing that's frequently helpful for an ADHD kid is to have them have some kind of responsibilities for the holidays. Whether it's doing decorations or helping cook and bake, or a lot of ADHD kids really like cooking for some reason, and that's something you obviously should take advantage of. Teach them to cook. I mean, it's a valuable ability, no matter what happens later in life. But they should have some responsibility for this stuff, and they shouldn't be just bored, just not having anything to do and having no responsibilities. Part of being a family is having responsibilities for each other in some ways. So make use of that. Next thing, medications. Okay, some people are tempted over the holidays or over any vacation to take their kids off of their medications. And I don't, depends. If your results with all that are okay or positive, I guess go ahead and do it. But cautious minds would suggest that taking your kiddo off of medication at a time when all kinds of new novelty changes, whoopie-doopie-doop, distracting stuff is happening is probably not a good idea. So if you're making do without, the breakdowns, the meltdowns, all that stuff, fine. But in general, cautious minds would say keep them on the medication throughout the holiday season. And that way you don't have to start them back up on it again either, which for most of us would be a good thing. Okay, one other thing. In my book, ADHD Strategic Parenting, I talk about the role of parents as mentors. Okay, and this is basically, all parents are mentors to some extent, but with an ADHD child, there are special areas that you really have to mentor more strictly than you would other kids, neurotypical children. Okay, and that is many areas, and like time management and how to use say a timer to improve your efficiency and your concentration and all that sort of stuff. And but one of the things that you also need to do is teach them how to control their emotions, how to control physiological arousal, how to calm down when they get jacked up, kind of thing. And this is basically in the ballpark of some kind of relaxation training or meditation or biofeedback. But the pure way to do it is that you teach and lead your child in different kinds of meditation exercises. And they can be as simple as just breath counting, like every time I exhale, I think to myself, one. Every time I exhale, I think one. And doing that over and over again. And do it with your child and try to get them so they can do 10 minutes. Okay? And sometimes if you treat it as a game, they really start trying to do really well. And that's pure gold, okay? So if you can learn about relaxation training, you can learn about meditation, and it wouldn't hurt you to learn it for yourself. But basically, in all kinds of meditation or relaxation training, whatever you want to call it, there are basically 4 things. You need a reasonably comfortable position, and you don't have to be sitting cross-legged, that kind of stuff. You can be sitting, but you need to be kind of sitting upright in a chair. You don't want to be, it's tricky if you do it lying down because there's a tendency to fall asleep, and then that confounds. That's not the same as being relaxed, okay? Most of us who've been around a while know that sleep isn't always that relaxing. But anyway, so you need a comfortable posture. You need a minimum level of distraction. That is, you need to be in a quiet place, especially when you start, okay? This is a skill. And until you've developed the skill, you can't just apply it whenever you want to. You need to have ideal settings at first. And that's just a minimum of distractions. No barking dogs, no telephone ringing, no people yelling at you, and your neighbor, the guy with the leaf blower that likes to blow it for 6 or 8 hours every weekend, and you don't have that ideally. So you practice your meditation technique, and like I said, the simplest one is just a breathing focus thing where you count breaths. And, for some it's enough to just do 1 every time. For others, you count to 4 or you count to 10 and then keep doing it over and over again. Knowing that you're going to get distracted and wander off, but when you find yourself doing that, you just bring your attention back to your breathing and start counting again. That's the simplest one. There are a bunch of others, but I'm not going to go into that right now, just for the sake of time. Another interesting new thing in the world is that there are apps out there. A lot of them are free. Some of them, no app costs that much. Well, I take that back. There's some medical ones that cost a fortune. But the apps, generally there are just sort of general relaxation apps, and some of them will talk you through a relaxation routine. Some of them just play relaxing sounds. Some of them are actually biofeedback kinds of things that require, usually you have to buy an additional device that plugs into your phone that maybe sticks on your ear and monitors blood flow and so on. But the ones I'm most familiar with, Relax Meditation, is an app I've been using for a long time. I like it because I don't have to listen to anybody else. It's just sounds, and I can pick the sounds. I find the ocean combined with Zen to be particularly relaxing. It's a thing called Relax Meditation. There's another one called Headspace, which actually has little short relaxation scenarios, and you can pick the one you want to listen to. And then there's another one called Just Breathe, which is a bunch bunch of breathing exercises. And then there's one called Inner Balance, which is, forgetting the company, Heart something or other. Anyway, and for that you have to buy a little sensor that plugs into your phone, and you usually stick it on your ear, and it monitors your blood flow. And it's basically a biofeedback, what we used to call biofeedback, which means that it's the equipment is telling you what your body's doing, how it's responding, and it gives you feedback on that continuously. And for some people, they really love that. Just the idea that, oh, look, I'm controlling my heart rate, or I'm controlling my blood pressure. Honestly, it would be a bad idea for all of us to know how to do that. And this is just a quick sample. I mean, these are the ones I have paid. Oh, I forgot one. There's one that I've forgotten what the name of that is. I think it's Headspace, but I could be wrong. And that has what's called binaural feedback, and what that is you have to have headphones on, and in each ear you get a different frequency, and the balance of the frequencies is supposed to affect the way your brain is functioning, or how uptight your brain is. It's supposed to, it either can energize or it can calm, and it's pretty good. I have been fairly impressed with it, and it doesn't. I think it's $4 or something like that. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. Okay, with your kid, keep your routines up. Watch their sugar consumption. Make sure they get plenty of exercise. Make sure they have activities to get involved in and enjoy. Give them some responsibilities to help the family out, okay? And make sure you're liberal with the praise when they're doing well. And I would recommend keeping them on their medications. And I would also recommend start now, if you haven't already. Teach them how to meditate or relax or whatever you want to call it. But teach them how to calm themselves down, because it's going to take a while. And you're kind of pushing the limit right now, but if you get started on that and do it about 10 or 15 minutes every day, by the time the holidays roll around, they probably have developed some skill, and they may surprise you and actually enjoy it. And a lot of that is about you. If you act like you enjoy it and it's kind of cool to be doing and all that other stuff, they're more likely to follow you. Okay, and that's me for today. Again, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And we are trying to make the world safe for ADHD. Because remember, normal people don't change the world. And your ADHDer may be the one who discovers something that changes the whole world for all of us. And with that hopeful thought, I'll catch you next time.